So this is going to be different from the morning, just a little bit, a little more nerdy, I think. The idea of the afternoon is to focus on assessment and what exactly does that mean in this arts integration world that we're trying to live in, and how why does it matter, and all of that good juicy stuff. So let us begin at the beginning. We're going to start just by kind of defining assessment, what it means to you, what it means to me throughout this session. Then we're going to look at really assessing art, like the qualities of quality, artistic, aesthetic expression. And then we're going to look at the process. How do you assess a process? And because we know that we value not just the product, but sometimes what happens along the way is super important. And that's where na hopena a'o comes in handy. And then we're going to look at the content, other content areas like science, social studies. Can you really tell if a kid gets the science idea by their tableau? Maybe, maybe not. So we're going to look at that too, those three areas. So let us begin with assessment. Can you start by having a conversation with the person next to you? Like, what are your thoughts and feelings about assessment as it is right now? How do you define it? Are the issues or problems that you face? So talking about assessment, what did you guys discuss? What are some of the definitions, issues that come up for you?
Formal, informal.
Formal versus informal. What about it?
Just that there's like different kinds. Like I know a lot about like testing text assessment. So I used to work for like the state writing test questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like kind of, when I hear assessment, that's what my mind goes to, because that's a kind of assessment that I'm good at.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the informal assessments where it's, you see things throughout the day, guess like, thumbs up, thumbs down, like those kind of things.
Super formative, that just give you a temperature check in the moment. Mm-hmm. Okay. For me, assessment is not equal to test taking at all. And test taking maybe is a part of assessment in terms of these important moments when you need to just check in and find out how your students are doing. And of course, it is compared to other students, maybe other schools, maybe other states. And that's that formal kind that you were talking about. It's one tiny piece of assessment. And that's not what we're talking about today, just so you know. Not tests. Sorry. You're like the only person I've ever known to be shucks about that. All right.
The numbers.
Yeah.
Just love the numbers.
And for me, assessment this discussion today is also not about grading. The one thing that I think grades, that this will come up today that has something to do with it, is this idea that we do communicate to families through assessment a lot of times. And this is when families are like, oh, A-, I know what that means. Thank you for the communication. And so grades are often just that, like this is our communication to the families about how your kid is doing in my class. But I really think it's important to communicate to families, but I think it's important to do it in more ways than grades. So we'll be touching on that a little bit today.
Sure. More ways than grades.
More ways than grades. And it's not for sorting either, for me. Assessment is not about sorting kids. The smart kids and the dumb kids. When IQ tests were originally created, the purpose was for sorting. It was a military purpose so that they could track who was going to be, an officer and who was going to be a foot soldier. And they did use assessments very, very much to sort men. And then that got into schools somehow at some point of tracking and sorting and all of that. And we just don't care who the superstars are. In fact, it's great to have them mixed in with everybody else so they can share the wealth. But sorting kids out is not my goal either.
What about like when they say like tiers, like because they're so
behind
and you gotta bring this? Is that like a sorting, or is that helping out when you put them in so that's like great?
I think tiers are wonderful. I'm like super big fan of tiers because being able to know who's struggling and who needs intensification is absolutely valuable. Whether it's behavior or whether it's reading, right? In the arts, we don't worry so much about the tiers, except for when it comes to maybe, I think, doing purposeful groupings so that you have some super risk takers in every group and you have some who are maybe need that peer encouragement in every group. Heterogeneous groupings is where I go for the arts. But In other areas of school, I think tiers are very powerful.
But that would be considered grouping, because your grouping is like, this is the excellent group, so they're in
Yeah.
one group.
Not really, because the way that IQ tests, I'll just refer to that one because it's so cut and dried. It's like, once an officer, always an officer.
Gotcha.
And the way tiers work is more like, you're struggling with this content at this moment, and you're not going to stay in
And
tier
tiers
2
move-
forever.
move like it's fluid.
Yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
yeah. For me, assessment is this Latin root of assessment really defines it for me. Assessus means to sit beside. And I love this idea. I mean, for so many people, assessment is actually quite threatening because it's like, oh, who's holding who accountable? Who's judging who? But really, it's not about judgment. It's about sitting beside the child, sitting beside the family, and even sitting beside yourself to see what can you do more, what differently, what do you need to adjust in your instruction. So that's a powerful part. And then the word a'o in Hawaiian is also a powerful part of assessment to me because of teaching and learning happening at the same time. If you taught a great lesson, but there's no evidence that they learned anything, then did you really teach? Even though they have to be accountable for their role, and you're accountable for yours, they have to happen together. Hopefully you'll meet my friend Mauliola Cook one of these days. She's a creative dancer and she will come and blow all of your minds, but maybe not this year. I also think of assessment as rehearsal because when in the drama world, you don't get it doesn't really matter what the report card says. What matters is if you have a quality performance. The only way you get better is by doing it, getting feedback, doing it again. Same thing in music, right? Get feedback, do it again, do it again. And that, to me, is what assessment is about.